This will be the next phase of the United States notes, ranging from the 1870s, from 1874 through 1878. So what we're going to do is, for the $1, I actually can show each of the 3 different years that are involved. So here's the first, and you can see it now says this note is a legal tender for $1 at the top, and at the bottom it says United States note. This one has the signatures of Allison and Spinner, and it still has a small round red pointed Treasury seal. So series of 1875 changed only the signatures. Now it's Allison and Wyman. And then 1878 changed the signatures again, Allison and Gilfillan. So let's take a look at the back sides just while we're there. They have this look. The sawhorse was introduced with this, as they call it, and no different from one to the next to the next. So I guess one first question to occupy us is, why would they be called United States notes? I can think of several good reasons. For one, they could still be considered United States notes in contrast to the old Confederate States notes that had existed before during the Civil War. But as we've already covered those, I don't really need to dwell into those again. So the United States notes, therefore, is the product of the North. Now, that's one thing. Now, another thing is, so that'd be to distinguish this, a United States note is distinct from a Confederate States note, even though it never said Confederate States notes. It hadn't said United States notes in the previous versions of these legal tender notes of the North either. So, but still, it's kind of a clarification as the Civil War begins to fall further and further behind us, historically speaking. So another thing would be that it was very much the idea was in this period they wanted to redeem this United States note. They wanted ultimately to cancel all of them and pull them out of circulation altogether because they were essentially a war debt that had to be paid off and then closed out. Well, they tried to kind of pay it down, and then there were reasons, especially in 1873, to re-expand it out again and different things. And they had to find some way to make these things worth gold, to be on par with gold. And by the end of 1879, they had found a way to do that. But moving on, let's look at what these notes look like. As I've indicated, the $1 all have the same except for the signatures between the different years. So I'll just show this the same for the other years, for the other denominations. So for $2, and these particular ones that I have here are both 1878. There's an Allison and a Gilfillan, and now you see, oh, that's a big close-up of the Capitol, and there's Thomas Jefferson, and then here, that's the back. And when it's a series of 1878, there'd be some place it would say 1878 on the back that gets added. And this other one is virtually the same. Indeed, it's really 2 signatures under 1878. This one being Schofield and Gilfillan. We will revisit that one later on, and he has the same look, as you can see. Now, $5. The wood chopper look introduced during the rainbow note era continues. Obviously, the rainbow coloring is gone, but you do have this big red thing with a V inside it on top of Washington, D.C., and this is therefore in 1875. And then there's Andrew Jackson. He's kind of been around. $5 here and a $10 in the Federal Reserve era, and then $20 in our more contemporary years. And we've even seen them on the $10,000 gold certificates of the old large size. So So here we have the 1875 $5 United States of America. And still, this note is a legal tender at its face value for all debts, public and private, except duties on imports and interest on the public debt. So that would be the next one up. Then the $10. You have this look, and here, the little red pattern on here simply says 10, spelled out as a word. And there's our usual red seal. And again, it's a United States note. And so all these things originated by the Act of March 3, 1863. So and here we are, back of the $10, the same look. All that precision there is on there. And then we move up to the $20 denomination. Now this time they start doing pairs of X's. That's how you would symbolize the Roman numeral for 20 would be a pair of X's. And there's our usual red seal. And this time it's a side view portrait or a profile of Alexander Hamilton. So that would be the $20, and that is the look of the $20. And you can see in this case they put series of 1878 on the ends instead of at the top, but it's the same thing as far as what was done on the others in 1878. Finally, we get up to the $50, and again, it would look not like the Rainbow series, but this time with Benjamin Franklin here. Familiar pose, finally. It's a rather odd symbol of Columbia. And then there would be these red L's for 50 because this is a $50. Now, I'm realizing I don't have a $100 to show, but we will be seeing a $100 very similar to that with our next series. But it wouldn't have what would have had here, which would have been a red letter C somewhere to symbolize 100. I could kind of illustrate what 500 might be like, so that at least we can get the idea. This is obviously just a simulation, just to show what it looks like for educational purposes. A real one of these things would be a museum rarity that extremely few collectors would even have. But it would have like this. Probably the seal would have been somewhere else, maybe here, and maybe there'd be a red letter D maybe up here. So it wouldn't be exactly like this, though the back would be pretty much about the same as what we have here. And then moving up the scale, we get to the 1000. Now this is a portrayal of an 1878 1000. So you can see kind of how it would be. There's the serial. There's a red letter M there, and also there. You looks like they got room for it. And it's still United States note. And it's still series of 1878. And this would be what the back of it looks like. So you can kind of see that's how they, sort of look like. And you still have this note is a legal tender, etc. Now this period is also kind of unusual in being the one time that this kind of money actually ascended the denominational rank of $5,000. Now, this doesn't show any additional red. It seems to have a larger seal, even while it's still 1878. There we go, series of 1878. And it had Madison on there, which, by the way, seems to be who's always on $5,000 bills. So, that's the $5,000, and amazingly enough, it even went higher than that. But let's look at the $5,000 for a bit. We only have images of these because of unprinted ones that had been provided to banks and foreign governments, just so that one could know what a real $5,000 note should look like as a comparison, so that you can discern out a counterfeit. At that rank of value, you'd really want to know if you were dealing with a counterfeit. And finally, here's another simulation. The 10,000, again, the same basic idea. So we just had these simulations, or even then they would use the same printings even, so that you could see everything perfectly. Here, all I can do is provide these copy simulations. That again are, just show what the note would have looked like. And this is also a series. Well, this may be a series of 1880 because it's got a brown seal, but it would look virtually the same as this. And the back of it would have this look. So teetering, starting in the 1878 and teetering basically early into the 1880, you would see this particular extreme of denomination. So the United States notes is the only form of money that went up to this rank, this denomination, except for the Federal Reserve notes and the gold certificates. Now, there is one other thing for this era that is also worth commenting on. This is also the era that gave us the first Treasury seals that were not green. Up until this point, in the beginning, you just had signatures during the demand note era and the original 1861 interest-bearing notes. Then, starting with 1862, they started having the red Treasury seal of various shapes and sizes, but it was always red, the seal itself, whatever else anything else would be. Well, but we did see a green Treasury note with the fractional currency. Now, this is an interesting style of a green Treasury seal. It has a sort of a bulbous look. You could compare it to a flower, or maybe think of it as kind of beaded as opposed to pointed or spiked or raised. So one could call, as opposed to plain, this could be called beaded. So this was the first appearance right here, this 50-cent note from the fourth phase of these 50s of these fractional currencies, as the very first time any different color was ever used for a Treasury seal. And in the fifth cycle, some of the 10-cent notes also had this Treasury seal in the green color. This shows the scalloped view, which was at the same time beginning to make its only other appearance this early on the national banknotes of the series of 1875. So there were these two exceptions, but up until, before we get to 1880 itself, the seals would always be red, or in these two tiny fractional note exceptional cases, they'd be green. So we won't be seeing a green seal again, however, for quite some time, and nowhere connected with the United States notes. So that's what I have for the United States notes. Thank you very much for listening.